This is a supplemental video to putting on the lamellar armour that I did earlier. Basically, it's to explain where the ideas for the lamellar came from, things like the colour and the methods of lacing and things like that. Essentially, the colour choices were from a series of paintings, primarily from the what's called the Great Mongol Shahnameh, which was originally a very large Ilkhanate production, made possibly in Tabriz in the 1330s. It is now in pieces all over the world due to the unfortunate method that it was sold. The dealer that owned it and whose name is sometimes attached to it as the Demot Shahnameh, broke it up into separate paintings because it was such a large book. He thought it was a good idea. Unfortunately, it's not a good idea at all, really, when you think about it. The paintings were spectacular. Unlike the earlier Shahnameh for Rashid ad-Din, that's in pieces, in a large part in Edinburgh. This was fully coloured with very expensive pigments, lapis lazuli blues and such things. But the result was that this particular book has very, very detailed paintings of armour, and this is quite unusual. Normally, armour was kind of sketched in, even in Chinese works. There's a degree of simplification, and to some extent, it's not really that good. I mean, the Tang Dynasty encyclopedias that were reprinted and re-edited in the Ming have various types of shortcuts for drawing the armour, and whereas it's the actual text is quite useful, the illustrations are sometimes really quite confusing. I'm going to just quickly flash one of these paintings to give you an idea what I'm talking about. It's a little bit difficult to get this right. There you go. If I get my hand out of the way, that's the wrong hand. You'll see coloured armours here in stripes. This is the painting that gave me the idea for doing whole rows of lamellar in different colours. This is a thing that's not otherwise attested to, and in fact, in this particular painting that I just showed you, the red and yellow banding is actually shown, and that was what it was directly copied from. There are others. There's a blue and grey one. The grey almost certainly was silver originally. The pigment being used is actual silver, and this oxidizes with the centuries, often turning completely black, sometimes just grey. There is a possibility this was actually originally grey, and it's meant to indicate iron scales. The blue could then be lacquered steel or lacquered iron. It's you know, it's a painting. It's not a photograph, so you don't really know. This particular page is in the Harvard University Art Museums in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and its access number is 1955.167. The other painting that I found quite useful, incidentally, just as a matter of interest, it's called Iskandar's Iron Cavalry, and it refers to a legendary feat of Alexander the Great, having made iron horses and horsemen and filling them with incendiaries. It's quite an interesting, if unlikely, event. Now I'm just flicking through here. You would have said, why didn't you just put page marks in there? But this is more fun because I like looking at the paintings. There's another fairly detailed painting which shows, and here we go again. I hope I get this right and don't put my fingers over everything. Which shows people in lamellar armour where, rather than contrasting the colours of the scales, they've contrasted the lacing colours. So you will see white scales with brownish red lacing, yellow scales with bright red lacing, white scales with blue lacing, yeah, that's basically the range. There's one particular figure who is wearing scales arranged in a checkerboard pattern of red and white. The artist had a bit of trouble working out how this was done, but we actually made an armour of this this style 25 years ago or so, and it's actually not that hard to do, and it's very spectacular, and we're hoping to do a video of that in the next few weeks. So that was the Faramurz pursuing the Kabulis. This particular page is now in the Musée du Louvre and in Paris, and it's referenced as 7095. This whole book, The Legacy of Genghis Khan, Courtly Art and Culture in Western Asia from 1256 to 1353, is a publication of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It's probably completely out of print. Looking at the publication date, it was 2002. It's an excellent book. If you can find it online, it's worthwhile buying a copy. It's very well researched. It's a series of essays and quite broad ranging. It really does. It gives you a lot of artwork. Both written documents, paintings, metalwork, all, like parts of the culture, including the famous gold-covered saddle that was recovered in Iran. The next book is Weapons in Ancient China, edited by Yang Hong. It was published by the Science Press in New York and Beijing. This is 1992, and it's a bit harder to get. It's a overview of ancient Chinese weapons, and using both in the kind of sense of ancien, like old China, and really ancient. It goes right back to pre-dynastic times. It's very useful because the English text is very well written. There are obviously problems. Back in 1992, they didn't have some of the advantages we have now. But considering when it was produced, this is a really useful book. It has many good quality drawings, black and white illustrations, and colour illustrations. Not as many. Back in those days, it was a lot harder to produce big coloured books. But what's really important is it's a systematic breakdown for each period of things, and I'll just give you an idea of what the chapters go through. Offensive weapons, which include shooting weapons, weapons used in hand-to-hand combat, then protective equipment, armour and helmets, such like, and it includes such useful things as archaeological photographs of lamellar scales, which gives you a good idea of what they were like. And also, on the opposite page actually, photographs of actual lamellar scales that have been excavated. The advantage, this is Tang Dynasty material. This is earlier compared to the Ilkhanids, but it's very valuable because it gives you an idea of how early some of the things like the coloured lacings and the coloured armour were brought about. Now, I'm pretty certain it was the Tang Dynasty that they started doing armour in different colours for, I would imagine, like different regiments. They go through, because being Chinese scholars, they have access to a lot of written material that's not generally circulated in the West. I mean, there are copies of these encyclopedias in many Western libraries, but the translations are rare, and quality translations are rarer because the people that are expert in Chinese of the period, and there are several periods, and there are several editions where sometimes mistakes are being made between periods, there is a tendency for things to do with weapons and armour to be translated fairly perfunctorily. It's not all the time. There's some really nice, well thought out publications and really some very good work. Some of the articles in Wenwu, for instance, are really well thought out, well illustrated, and well worth looking up. I'm just trying to find the here we go. This is talking about the Sui dynasty, which was just prior to the Tang dynasty. So we're looking at a time that's contemporaneous with late Sasanian Iran. I'm not saying that this is particularly relevant, except to show how early this type of complex coloured armour was being used. This is just quoting. According to the history of the Sui dynasty, the first regiment was equipped with iron Mingguang armour and iron horse armour, threaded with black silk cord and decorated with black tassels. It also flew a flag with a drawing of a lion, Swan Yi. The second regiment had red leather armour and red leather horse armour, threaded with red silk cord and decorated with red tassels. It flew a bieshur, a fabulous wild beast like a leopard known for its ferocity, traditionally used on flags for an army. Flag. The third regiment had white iron Mingguang armour and iron horse armour threaded with white silk cord and decorated with white tassels. It flew a bieshur, a legendary wild beast traditionally used on flag. The fourth regiment sported black leather armour and black leather horse armour threaded with black silk cord and decorated with black tassels, and it flew a Yubo flag. So you can see there that some of the armours that we were talking about from the Ilkhanid paintings were already in use quite early, like hundreds of years before. This is not a thing that suddenly sprung up among the Mongols. The Mongols and their allies were using quite complex armour that had. It's difficult to say. It's almost like you're looking at a joint development and possibly a backwards and forwards arms race between armour and weapons between the Chinese militaries of the various dynasties and the various northern steppe empires. The Mongols were definitely aware of many of these things, and it's quite clear from the illustrations from Iran that a lot of this material came west into Iran. Now, whether previous Turkish groups were already using similar armour, it's quite hard to say. The illustrations from the Mongol period are much more detailed, and it makes it easier for us to work out what kind of armours were being used. Here's some material from the Wubeji, should be Wubeji, Manual of Weapons by Mao Yonyi. The number and weight of the iron plates of a suit of iron armour at the time given both in the Sung Shi Bingji records of weaponry history of the Song Dynasty and the Sung Hui Yao Yi Gao drafts for the history of the administrative statutes of the Song Dynasty. This is so wonderfully bureaucratized. It was decreed by the government in the 4th year of the reign of Shaoxing, that's 1134 in our dates, that the total weight of a suit of iron armour should be 45 to 50 catties, and in no case exceeding 50 catties. That the number of iron plates for an entire armour suit should be 1825. A catty is roughly 1.3 pounds in the imperial measure. So 50 catties is not a light armour. In comparison to the leather armour that I demonstrated putting on, which is only 25, 26 pounds, which would be maybe 20 catties, thereabouts, 21 catties. It's basically half the weight of one of these iron armours. It says in the 4th year of the period of Chondal, which is 1168, this weight was reduced, but the number of iron plates was increased. The author then says, this is an indication that the iron plates making up the armour were much finer than they had been before. Moreover, different suits of armour made for spear users, archers, crossbow operators, respectively. So then there's a table giving the weights and numbers of plates in the various kinds of armour in the Southern Sung Dynasty. Now, the Southern Sung Dynasty was the Chinese dynasty fighting the Mongols. And there would have been a lot of crossover. Captured armours, the Mongols captured cities, they would have captured whole armories. And there was no reason that judging from the paintings, they quite clearly had no problem taking this armour and using it. There's a very interesting point here. In one of the letters written by Zhiqi to Zheng, an official serving at the court, it says that to make a suit of iron armour for an archer takes a blacksmith 120 work days and cost about 3,500 cash. This is a copper coin. When you look, these are illustrations from the encyclopedia. I'll just try and get that more centered. Everything's upside down. These are the illustrations I was talking about, where the armours are sometimes thought to be back opening, when in fact, if you actually look at the arrangement of the plates and the straps, that they're front opening. And when we do another video on the another one of the armours, I'll show what that means and why when you look at these illustrations and you make the armour, that it works as a front opening armour but not as a back opening armour. It's quite interesting in the table. They give a description for a complete suit of armour from 1134, a armour for a spear carrying soldier from 1168, and an armour for an archer from 1168, and the armour for a crossbowman from 1168. The first one was 1100 scales. It weighed, this is the body, the trunk. It weighed 28 catties and some change. The shoulder pieces added up to 504 armour plates, and it was 8 catties and a bit. The helmet, and the number of plates given here would be for the neck guard, 310. and it was 5 caddies and some. Now that 5 caddies, when you think about it, it's quite a heavy helmet, but a lot of that's in the neck guard, and when you wear a helmet with this type of neck guard, it doesn't actually feel as heavy as you might think it would from just the raw figures. So the total armour was just over 49 caddies. This is a very heavy armour. The armour for the spear-wielding soldier was 53 caddies. The armour for the archer was 47, and the armour for the crossbowman was only 37. The helmets, except for the spear-fighting soldier, were all between 5 and 6 caddies. For the spear-fighting soldier, the helmet was much heavier. It was 9 caddies. Now, without further checking of this, which I haven't been able to do, it's hard to say whether these are specifically horsemen. The crossbowmen generally weren't horsemen, but they could be. The fact that the crossbowman's armour is considerably lighter, like 10 to 15 caddies lighter, suggests to me that it is for a foot soldier. The archer's armour, almost certainly for a horseman, the same for the spearman, and the same for the complete suit of armour. So what we've got here is a fairly detailed contemporary source for how the armour was put together. Now, the leather armour that I tried on has nowhere near the number of scales as some of these armours. It's got about 550 scales.